40 feet below the surface of Cypress Lake in South Dakota, a diver's camera pushes through the murky dark. It's September 2023, and the sonar has just picked up something large, something that clearly doesn't belong down there. Then, through the drifting silt, a shape appears. Cold metal, a gray Jeep Grand Cherokee, resting quietly on the lake bottom like a sealed tomb. The recovery team's radio hisses to life. "We've got a vehicle. License plate visible." A beat of silence. "And there's something inside." It turns out this Jeep had been harboring a secret for 29 years. A body. A story that someone thought could be buried underwater forever. Now let's go back to September 18, 1994. A teenager by the name of Jaime Halenol gets into this very Jeep, taking it from his mother for what should have been a quick trip. He's 19 years old, a bit anxious, going out to meet someone he trusts, someone from the family circle. By the next morning, Jaime is gone, simply vanished. Police closed the case in 3 days, calling him a runaway. But Jaime didn't run. He was murdered. And the man who pulled the trigger truly believed he'd erased every trace. But before we describe how that Jeep came to be 40 feet underwater, you need to know who put it there and why. If you're new here, we cover cases that rattle small-town America to its core. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story where the truth eventually rises to the surface. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. So that I can explain what occurred the September night at Cypress Lake, you need to know Jaime. Not the name on a cold case file, not another missing person number, a real young man whose future was taken away from him. Jaime Michael Halenol was 19 years old in the year 1994. He had his mother's dark eyes and his late father's steady, capable hands. The kind of hands built for repairing whatever life broke. He was studying automotive technology at Black Hills Community College. But honestly, most of his learning happened at Halenol and Sons Hardware on Main Street in Glen Cross. The store had been in the family since 1967. Jaime's grandfather built it. His father, Thomas Halenol, expanded it. And someday, Jaime was expected to take it over. Every afternoon after school was out, he'd roll in with grease-stained jeans and dive right into work. Everybody liked him. He knew every tool, every bolt, every little part that was in that store. Older customers would come in only to ask his advice on a tractor engine that refused to start, or a pipe that refused to stop leaking. And he always gave them his time, even if it meant helping Mrs. Patterson pick out $2 screws one by one. That was Jaime, capable, patient, and endlessly kind. Jaime's mother, Rachel, had been running the store ever since Thomas died suddenly of a heart attack in 1991 at just 45. Overnight, she became a widowed mother of 3 with a business to keep alive. She was tough because she had to be. But Jaime made it easier. He helped with inventory, suppliers, payroll. More than anything, they were close. Best friend close. They had coffee together every morning before unlocking the doors. They talked about the business, life, and all the dreams they still hoped to build. And then there was Mila, Jaime's 16-year-old sister, a high school sophomore in 1994. If you'd ask her who her hero was, she would have responded with Jaime before you finish the question. He drove her to school, helped with homework, taught her how to change a tire, and kept the bad boyfriends away. In her eyes, he could do no wrong. The Halenol family had already survived the loss of Thomas, and they were bruised but holding each other up. And then there was Sarah. Sarah Halenol was the oldest, 24 in 1994. She had always been a little different from her siblings, more private, more eager to get away from small-town life. She worked receptionist jobs in Rapid City and dated a string of men her family never quite warmed to. Then in June 1994, she married Aaron Lindell. Aaron was 28 and an outsider through and through. He grew up in Rapid City and claimed he worked in finance consulting, a phrase vague enough to mean almost anything. He dressed sharp, spoke smoothly, and smiled without ever giving away what he was really thinking. Rachel had her doubts, but Sarah insisted she'd found the right man. After the wedding, Aaron moved to Glen Cross. The small-town pace wasn't his style, but he adapted just enough. Joined the Methodist church, showed up for the community barbecues, played the part of the friendly new son-in-law. And in early 1994, before he had even married Sarah, He approached Rachel with a proposal. The hardware store was growing, and Rachel was needing help. Someone to manage the books, keep the accounts in order, and smooth out the day-to-day financial headaches. Aaron stepped in at just the right moment. He said he had experience. He said he could make things easier, and Sarah backed him completely. He's family now, Mom. Let him help. So Rachel agreed. She hired him. Just like that, Aaron Lindell became the store's financial manager. He had access to everything: bank accounts, vendor contracts, payroll, the whole operation. And for a while, everything seemed okay. He was organized, polite, efficient. The books looked clean. Rachel felt relieved. Jaime didn't. Not immediately. He couldn't quite put a name to it, but something was wrong. The way Aaron dodged direct questions, the way some of the receipts just didn't quite line up with the numbers. They were little things, easily overlooked, but Jaime did notice them, especially during the summer of 1994. We'll return to that, but for now you need to visualize Glen Cross. If you haven't spent time in a small South Dakota town, let me paint a picture for you. A population of about 3,200, one main street, two stoplights, a single diner that closes at 7 p.m. on the dot. Friday night football games that involve the whole town, whether anyone likes football or not. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your triumphs, your heartaches, and, whether you like it or not, your secrets. The town sits amidst an ocean of corn and soybeans, with families who've lived there for generations. The Halenols were part of that mixed solid, respected, and woven into Glen Cross like threads in an old quilt. Cypress Lake sat just outside of town, 2 miles down Highway 73. Not a large lake, maybe half a mile across, but deep enough to swallow a lot of things. Folks fished there, kids swam there in the summer, teenagers parked their cars there at night. Peaceful, quiet, until the night it became a crime scene. That was Jaime's favorite lake. His dad taught him to fish in it. Now that Thomas was gone, Jaime would sometimes drive out alone, sit on the hood of the Jeep, and let his thoughts settle. It was his refuge, which made it the perfect place for Aaron to exploit. By September 1994, Jaime was just days away from unmasking what Aaron had done. He'd found the problems in the store's accounts, $47,000 gone over 8 months, through fake invoices, inflated charges, and numbers twisted just enough to mask the truth. Jaime had proof, all of it, and being the fair player that Jaime is, he wanted to give Aaron a chance to explain himself before taking it to Rachel. Even then, even with proof in hand, Jaime extended him grace. On the night of September 18th, 1994, Jaime told his mother he had to meet someone to clear something up. He looked tense, distracted, his thoughts running on ahead of him. Rachel asked if he was all right. Jamie kissed her cheek and said, "I'll be back in an hour, Mom." Promise. He had borrowed her gray Jeep Grand Cherokee, driven off into the fading South Dakota light, and never come back. Sunday, September 18th was one of those late summer evenings where the heat finally relinquishes its hold and the scent of dusty fields settles into the air. The sun was low over Glen Cross, casting long shadows down Main Street. He had spent most of the day helping Rachel at the store with inventory, quiet work, the kind that usually soothed him. But Rachel sensed something different. Jaime kept checking the time, glancing toward the phone. His mind was somewhere else. He pulled her into the back office around 6. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something," he said. "But not yet. I have to handle it first." Rachel frowned. "Handle what?" "Just trust me. I'll explain everything tonight." It should have been a warning sign, but Rachel knew her son. He was steady, careful. If he said he had it under control, he usually did. What she didn't know, and wouldn't learn for 29 years, was that Jaime had spent the entire previous week digging through the hardware store's financial records. Late nights with spreadsheets, bank statements, receipts. And what he found was unmistakable. $47,000 missing. Fake invoices from companies that didn't exist. Payments to contractors who were never hired. Small withdrawals at first, then bigger ones. It added up fast. Aaron was draining the business. Jaime didn't guess. He documented everything, printed out the records, highlighted the suspicious transactions, traced every dollar. And on September 17th, the day before he disappeared, he confronted Aaron. It happened after the store closed. Rachel had gone home. Mila was out with friends. Only Aaron and Jaime remained inside. It was only Jaime and Aaron in the back office that night. We will never know every word exchanged between them, but we do know how the conversation ended, with Aaron persuading Jaime not to go to the police. Not yet. Let me explain, Aaron told him. There's more to this. Meet me tomorrow night, somewhere private. I'll bring the money back. I'll fix everything. And the ever-optimistic Jaime agreed. He didn't want to blow up his sister's marriage if this really was a misunderstanding. Aaron was family now, after all. So they set a time and a place. September 18th, 7:30 p.m. Cypress Lake. The boat launch parking lot, quiet, secluded, out of sight. Yet Jaime had thought he was giving Aaron an opportunity to set things right. Aaron had been planning something far darker. On Sunday, September 18th, 1994, at 7:45 p.m., Jaime kissed his mother goodbye and stepped out the front door of their home on Elm Street. He climbed into Rachel's gray Jeep Grand Cherokee, license plate SDA 4729, and backed out of the driveway. Rachel stood on the porch, waving. Jaime waved back. It was the last time she saw her son alive. Jaime drove east on Main Street, past the dark storefronts and the neon glow of the Methodist church sign. He pulled into Mike's Gas and Go on Highway 73 at 8:15 p.m. The attendant, a teenager named Dustin Garrett, recalled the stop later. Filled the tank. Jaime paid in cash, looked normal, maybe a little distracted, but nothing unusual. Then Jaime drove south toward Cypress Lake. He pulled into the boat launch around 8:35 p.m. Aaron's truck was already there, a black Ford F-150 parked close to the water. Aaron was standing beside it, arms crossed, waiting. Jaime parked the Jeep and stepped out, carrying the folder of evidence with him. "Let's talk," he said. Aaron nodded toward the shore, down by the water. "Don't want anyone hearing us." So they walked toward the lake, off the road and into gathering darkness. The sun was gone. The night was still. Only the soft lap of water and the hum of crickets filled the space between them. He opened the folder and started laying out the invoices, pointing out each discrepancy. His voice was steady, serious, but not angry. "Aaron, this is bad," he said. "You took almost $50,000 from my family. I need to know why." Aaron said nothing for a moment. He just stared at the lake, expression blank. Then he spoke. "You shouldn't have looked, Jaime." A chill ran through Jaime. Something in Aaron's tone, flat, colorless, hit him hard. "Aaron, I'm trying to help you," Jaime said quietly. "We can fix this. Pay it back. Figure something out before—" "Before what?" Aaron snapped. "Before you ruin my life? Before you tell Rachel and she calls the police? Before Sarah walks out on me?" "This isn't about ruining you," Jaime said. "You stole from us. I borrowed it. With what plan to repay it?" Silence. Jaime shook his head. "I'm telling my mom tomorrow. You need to come clean tonight, or I will." That's when Aaron pulled the gun. A .38 revolver. He'd bought it at a pawn shop 2 months earlier, registered in his name, though he would later claim he'd sold it at a yard sale, conveniently without paperwork. Jaime froze. "Aaron, what are you doing? I can't let you do this. Aaron, put the gun down. We can dash. I'm sorry, Jaime." The shot cracked across the lake, a hard, final sound that scattered birds from the trees. Jaime staggered back, clutching at his chest. Blood spread across his shirt as he fell to his knees, gasping, trying to speak. No words came. In a moment, all life had fled his eyes. Aaron was looming over him, his face neither panicked nor emotive, just cold calculation. He dragged Jaime's body to the Jeep and lifted him into the driver's seat, wiping the door handles clean. He grasped the folder of evidence and threw it into the lake, weighted down with rocks. Then he climbed into the Jeep, started the engine, and drove slowly toward the water. He'd selected this exact spot weeks in advance. A steep drop-off, deep water 40 feet down. This side of the lake was avoided by fishermen because of submerged trees. Aaron put the Jeep in neutral, stepped out, and pushed. The tires crunched over the gravel. The Jeep rolled forward, nose first, and hit the lake with a splash. For a moment it bobbed, almost peacefully. Then the front dipped. Water flooded through the cracks around the doors and windows. The Jeep sank slowly, bubbles drifting upward. Within 2 minutes, it disappeared into the black water. Aaron stood there, breathing hard, and glanced at his timepiece. 9:47 p.m. He then walked back to his truck, got in, and drove home. Sarah was sitting on the couch watching TV when he walked in the door. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Just needed to clear my head," Aaron said. "Drove around for a bit." That night, Sarah didn't push for answers. Aaron kissed her on the forehead and went to bed, settling in like any other night. He slept soundly. But across town at 2 in the morning, Rachel Halenol sat wide awake and stared out into her empty driveway. Jaime had promised her he'd be home in an hour. 6 had passed. Every minute felt like a stone on her chest. She called Sarah's house and nobody responded. She called Jaime's friends. Nothing. At 6 a.m., Rachel's hands shook as she dialed the Glen Cross Police Department. "My son didn't come home last night. His name is Jaime Halenol. He's 19. He took my Jeep and he's not answering his phone. Something's wrong. Please, please find him." The dispatcher took her report and told her they'd look into it. But the truth is, they didn't. Not seriously. To the Glen Cross Police Department, Jaime was just another teenager who probably took off for a few days. In their minds, runaways usually wander back on their own. But Jaime wasn't wandering anywhere. He was lying at the bottom of Cypress Lake, 40 feet below the surface, less than 2 miles from his home, a bullet inside his chest. And the man responsible for this would spend the next 29 years walking around like nothing happened. September 19th, 1994. Morning. Rachel sat in a stiff plastic chair inside the Glen Cross Police Department. She'd been there since 6:30, clutching a tissue she'd nearly shredded. Jaime had now been missing for 12 hours. At 9 a.m., Sheriff Tom Brackens finally called her into his office. Brackens was a hometown man, 30 years on the force, and had seen his share of fights, crashes, and neighbor disputes. Missing young adults, though? In his experience, they always wandered back, usually broke, usually embarrassed. Rachel sat across from him with eyes swollen from crying. "Mrs. Halenol, I know you're scared," Bracken said, "but let's look at the facts. Jaime's 19, legally an adult. There's no sign of foul play. All his belongings are still at home, right?" "Yes, but..." "You two have an argument recently? Any stress? Tension?" "No," she said, her voice tight. "We're close." "He wouldn't leave without telling me." Brackens leaned back, settling into that chair like he'd said these words 100 times. "With all due respect, ma'am, 19-year-olds do this. They get overwhelmed. School pressures, relationship problems. They take off. Maybe he headed toward Sioux Falls, maybe Denver. They come back when the money runs out." "Jaime's not like that," Rachel insisted. "I'm sure he's a good kid," Bracken said, "but even good kids make sudden decisions." Rachel's voice cracked. "He took my Jeep. He told me he'd be home in an hour. Something happened. I can feel it." Bracken sighed. "We'll put out a bolo for the Jeep. If an officer spots it, we'll bring him in. But I've been doing this a long time. 9 times out of 10, these cases fix themselves within 72 hours. Rachel walked out of the station feeling dismissed, pushed aside, as if her son's disappearance was a minor annoyance on someone's paperwork. She drove straight to Sarah's house. Sarah replied, her eyes swollen from crying. Aaron stood behind her, arms folded, expression unreadable. "Mom, what's going on?" "Where's Jaime?" I don't know," Rachel answered, her voice trembling. "He didn't come home." "Did he call you? Leave a message? Anything?" Sarah shook her head. "No, nothing. Mom, where is he?" Aaron stepped forward. "Mrs. Halenol, I'm sure he's fine. Jaime's smart, capable. Maybe he just needed space." "Space from what?" Rachel asked. Aaron shrugged lightly. "School, maybe." He seemed stressed, said something about workload piling up. Rachel frowned. Jaime loved school. He'd never once complained about being overwhelmed. "When did he say that?" she asked. "Last week, at the store." Something in her gut twisted. The timing, the tone. It just didn't sit right. But her mind was spinning too fast to make sense of it. Sarah grasped her mother's hands and said, "We'll help look. We'll drive around, check everywhere he goes." He's fine, Mom. He has to be. But the shake in her voice betrayed the fear she was working hard to conceal. On September 20th, Rachel filed an official missing persons report. She brought in photos, descriptions, the Jeep's plate number, a list of Jaime's usual spots. Sheriff Brackens took the paperwork and gave the same calm reassurance. But behind the scenes, nothing happened. No search parties, no dive team, no helicopters, not even a cursory view of Cypress Lake, which sits less than 2 miles from where Jaime was last seen. They didn't even bother walking the shoreline. Why didn't the police search? In Sheriff Brackens's mind, this was simple. A 19-year-old had walked away on his own terms. And with a department low on staff and stretched thin, he wasn't about to launch a full search for someone he assumed would come strolling home on his own. Rachel begged him, pleaded with him. Please, at least check the lake. He loved fishing there. What if something happened? But Brackens waved her off. Mrs. Halenol, if Jaime had an accident at the lake, someone would have seen the Jeep. Fishermen are out there every day, except they weren't. That week, no one had been fishing at Cypress Lake. A thick algae bloom had turned the water murky, and the regulars stayed away. But details like that didn't shake Brackens. He'd already made up his mind. On September 20th, Deputy Mike Corwin sat down with Aaron Lindell for the routine interview, talked to friends, family, co-workers, get a sense of the missing person's life. Aaron came in calm, collected, almost polished. When did you last see Jaime? Saturday afternoon at the hardware store, Aaron said. We closed at 5. How did he seem? Quiet, a little distracted. I asked if he was okay and he said he was fine, but I felt like something was bothering him. Any idea what that might have been? Aaron paused just long enough to look thoughtful. Not sure. Jaime puts a lot of pressure on himself. School, helping his mom, the store. Maybe it got overwhelming. Did he mention going anywhere? No. Any fights? Arguments? None at all. We got along great. Corwin wrote it all down. Everything sounded steady and believable. Nothing jumped out. Nothing seemed strange. Aaron strolled out of the station without a shadow of suspicion falling on him. Family is seldom questioned too closely in small towns. September 21st, 1994. 72 hours after Jaime vanished, Sheriff Brackens officially closed the case. Classification, voluntary missing person. The news came to Rachel over the phone. We've done everything we could, Mrs. Halenol. There's no evidence of foul play. Jaime left on his own. He's an adult. If he contacts you, let us know. Otherwise, there's nothing more we can do. Just like that. 3 days. That's what her son's life was worth to them. No forensic sweep of Jaime's room. No phone records pulled. Look into the finances of the hardware store. No interviews with his professors or classmates. No search of Cypress Lake. Nothing. Jaime became a number in a folder, a dusty file shoved into a drawer. Meanwhile, the man who killed him continued living his life, untouched. These were not just human failures, but structural ones. The police department of Glen Cross, like so many small-town departments, lacked resources and training and up-to-date missing persons procedures. And there was no state oversight, no pressure to revisit a case once they'd labeled it voluntary. But it wasn't just that. Bias played its part. A 19-year-old goes missing. He ran away. A worried mother insists on an explanation. She's overreacting. A serene family member comes forward to help. He must be innocent. Aaron Lindell utilized all those assumptions to his advantage. He knew how small communities worked. He knew where their blind spots were. And most importantly, he knew being Sarah's husband, being part of the family, would protect him. He was right. Aaron walked free for 29 years while Jaime lay at the bottom of Cypress Lake. But Rachel never let the world forget her son. Not for one day. And that unshakable resolve, that quiet fire she carried for almost 3 decades, would finally bring the truth to the surface. Before we go on, if this story is hitting home for you, tap the like button. It helps push Jaime's story out to more people who need to hear it. Now herein begins Rachel's real journey. 29 years. That's how long she searched. 10,585 days of waking up with hope and going to bed with the same heavy ache in her chest. Most would have stopped in their tracks. They would have accepted that sometimes answers don't come. But Rachel wasn't most people. In the months following Jaime's disappearance, she did everything Sheriff Brackens refused to do. She printed 5,000 missing flyers, Jaime's face taped to telephone poles, grocery store boards, and rest stops across South Dakota, Nebraska, and Wyoming. Missing, Jaime Michael Halenol, 19 years old. Last seen September 18, 1994. She drove to Sioux Falls, Rapid City, Cheyenne. Everywhere she could imagine a young man might go to start over. Rachel traveled from town to town, going into diners and gas stations, even homeless shelters, holding up Jaime's picture with a type of quiet hope only a mother can carry. "Have you seen him? Please, he's my son." And each time the answer had been the same. Nothing. No leads, no trace. She hired her first private investigator in 1996, a retired cop from Pierre by the name of Dennis Kowalski. For 6 months, he chased every whisper he could find, from Colorado to Montana. He talked with Jaime's college friends, old co-workers, relatives Rachel barely remembered, and still, nothing. When Kowalski finally sat down with her, he looked tired, heavy. "Ms. Halenol," he said gently, "if Jaime wanted to disappear, he did a hell of a job." Or, he caught himself, but Rachel heard the words he didn't say. "Or he's dead." She fired him the next morning, not because she thought he was wrong, because she couldn't let her mind go there. Not yet. She established a tip line, listing her own home number, and printed it in newspapers across 3 states. At first, the calls poured in. Then they trickled. Then they became a strange mix of hope, heartbreak, and cruelty. A trucker in Kansas thought he'd seen Jaime at a rest stop. One woman in Omaha was convinced that he was working construction nearby. None of it led anywhere. And then there were the prank calls, people pretending to be Jaime, asking for money, laughing when Rachel broke down. She answered every call anyway, because what if, just once, the voice on the other end was real? Mila was Jaime's younger sister, 16 when he vanished, a sophomore in high school with big plans and a life full of momentum. All of it came to a stop on September 19th, 1994. She stopped attending school. She lost weight, couldn't sleep. Some nights she lay awake, replaying her last conversation with Jaime. Something silly about borrowing his CD player. He'd teased her, messed up her hair. "See you later, squirt." She never got that. Later, Mila developed crushing anxiety and panic attacks. But what hit her hardest was the guilt, like a weight pressing down on her chest. Why didn't I ask where he was going? Why didn't I stop him? Therapy helped a little. Time helped a little. But what finally lit a spark in her was anger. Steady, focused, purposeful. At age 20, Mila was already volunteering with missing persons organizations, advocating for changes to be made regarding the way law enforcement involved themselves in these cases. In 2003, she stood before the South Dakota State Legislature, hands trembling but voice firm. "My brother was dismissed as a runaway in 72 hours. No search, no investigation, no justice. How many other families are going through this because we failed them?" The bill passed. It became known as Jaime's Law. But passing a law didn't bring her brother home. Meanwhile, Sarah, Jaime and Mila's older sister, had problems of her own. Her marriage to Aaron had begun to crumble. In 1998, 4 years after Jaime disappeared, Sarah filed for divorce. She never gave a clear reason, but Rachel remembered the late-night visits. Sarah crying quietly at the kitchen table. "He's so cold, Mom." Different, paranoid. "When I bring up Jaime, he shuts down completely. It's like he doesn't care." Rachel had suggested counseling. Sarah tried. Aaron refused. "There's nothing to fix," he said to her. "I'm fine." "You're the one with the problem." The divorce was finalized in February of 1998. Sarah moved back to Rapid City to rebuild her life. Aaron remained in Glen Cross for another year, working odd jobs and keeping to himself. Then during the summer of 1999, he vanished, left town without a word. No forwarding address, no explanation. Sarah called Rachel, fear in her voice. "Have you heard from Aaron?" "No, why would I? He's just gone." Phone disconnected, apartment empty. A cold knot in her stomach, Rachel pushed it away. People leave small towns all the time. Aaron had always been strange. Why question it? No one, including Rachel, suspected that his disappearance had anything to do with Jaime. Why would they? In 2001, Rachel hired another private investigator, then a third in 2008. Both came up with nothing. She spent over $60,000 trying to find answers that always stayed an inch out of reach. By 2010, Rachel was 61. Her hair had gone gray, her hands trembled with years of stress, and the hardware store barely stayed afloat. She'd poured everything she had, money, time, her whole heart, into searching for Jaime. Friends begged her to stop, to let go, to accept that some mysteries would remain unsolved. But how do you bury someone when there's no body? How do you grieve when you don't know if they're alive or dead? Rachel couldn't, and she wouldn't. She kept Jaime's room exactly the way he left it. The bed was neatly made, his automotive textbook stacked on the desk, his Nirvana poster still pinned to the wall, corners curling slightly with time, a museum of a life frozen in place, a room waiting for its owner to walk through the door again. Every year on March 14th, Jaime's birthday, Rachel maintained a tradition she could not let go of. She baked his favorite cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, just the way he liked it. She'd light a single candle, sit at the kitchen table, and talk to him as if he were right there beside her. "I'm still looking, sweetheart. I'm not giving up. Wherever you are, I'm going to find you." Mila would always sit with her, holding her mother's hand. She didn't say much. Some moments are too heavy for words. The turning point finally came in 2022. By then, Rachel was 73 and tired in a way only decades of heartbreak can carve into a person. Her health was slipping. Arthritis, high blood pressure, and a heart worn thin by hope and fear. One evening while scrolling through Facebook, something she almost never did, she noticed a post shared by a group called Recovery Reach. They were volunteer divers who helped families searching for loved ones lost in lakes, rivers, and reservoirs, places where police rarely looked. The post showed a car they'd pulled from a lake in Iowa, tied to a missing person case from 2001. A family finally had answers. Rachel froze. Cypress Lake. She'd begged the sheriff to search it back in 1994, and he'd brushed her off, told her it wasn't necessary, that someone would have seen the Jeep if it were in there. But what if he'd been wrong? She typed a message with shaking hands. Subject, cold case. Jaime Halenol, missing since 1994. She told them everything, that he was 19, that he'd borrowed her Jeep, that he'd never come home, that the police had said he'd run away, but that she knew better. And Cypress Lake, the one place she knew in her gut needed searching, had never been checked, not once. She concluded the message with a simple plea. "Please, if there's any chance you can help, I'm begging you. I need to bring my son home." She hit send, then waited. 2 days later, Recovery Reach wrote back, "Mrs. Halenol, we have reviewed your son's case, and we'd like to help. We will be in South Dakota in September 2023 to conduct a full sonar search of Cypress Lake. There is no cost. Every family deserves answers." Rachel folded into her chair and wept. Someone finally had believed her after 29 years. When September 2023 arrived, so did Recovery Reach. They came with a boat, high-end sonar gear, and a 5-person dive team. Rachel and Mila stood on the water's edge as the crew prepared it all. Mila squeezed her mother's hand. "Mom, whatever they find, we're going to be okay." Rachel nodded through her tears. She wanted nothing more than to take her son home. Their white Ford F-250 rolled into Glen Cross on September 12th, pulling a 20-foot boat and equipment packed tight as a toolbox. Team leader Curtis Webb was a steady-looking man in his early 40s who had the calm confidence of someone who'd seen hard things. A former Navy diver, he'd started the group called Recovery Reach after losing a nephew in a drowning accident. He knew what it was like to wait for answers that never came. He had met Rachel and Mila that morning at 8 a.m. Rachel looked fragile, with her cane in her hand and a face marked by decades of exhaustion, but her eyes shone bright with determination. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice trembling. Curtis shook her hand warmly. "We'll do everything we can, Mrs. Halenol. I can't promise anything, but we'll search every inch of this lake." Mila stood close, her arm around her mom. At 48, she had spent more years without her brother than with him. This search felt like their final chance. The crew began to unload the sonar equipment, a tangle of screens and sensors that looked like something borrowed from a futuristic lab. Curtis explained how they'd sweep the lake in a grid pattern, starting near the boat launch. "If there's a vehicle down there," he said, "we'll find it." Rachel attempted to answer, but emotion caught in her throat. She could only nod. With that, the boat slipped into the water and the search began. Day one gave them nothing. The sonar picked up rocks, debris, the usual clutter at the bottom of an old lake, an abandoned shopping cart, a few submerged stumps, but no vehicle. Rachel sat on the folding chair at the shore, her eyes locked on the boat as it traced slow lines across the water. Mila brought her water and a sandwich she barely touched. "Mom, you need to rest," Mila whispered. Sarah didn't push. Aaron kissed her on the forehead and went straight to bed, sleeping like nothing was wrong. But Rachel Halenol couldn't. By 2 a.m., she was wide awake, staring out at the empty driveway. Jaime had promised he'd be back in an hour. It was now past 6. Panic rising, she called Sarah's house. No answer. She called Jaime's friends. Nothing. Her hands shook as she dialed the Glen Cross Police Department at 6 a.m. "My son didn't come home last night," she told the dispatcher. "His name is Jaime Halenol. He's 19. He borrowed my Jeep and isn't responding. Something's wrong. Please, you have to find him." The dispatcher nodded, promised they'd look into it, but they didn't. At least not really. To the Glen Cross Police Department, Jaime Halenol was just another runaway, and runaway cases, they believed, often solved themselves. Except Jaime didn't run. He was 40 feet underwater, less than 2 miles from home, with a bullet in his chest. And the man responsible? He was about to spend the next 29 years pretending he'd done nothing wrong. By the morning of September 19, 1994, Rachel sat in the police station waiting room, clutching a crumpled tissue. Her son had been missing for 12 hours. Sheriff Tom Brackens finally called her into his office at 9 a.m. Brackens, 56, a lifelong Glen Cross native with 30 years on the force, had seen it all. Bar fights, drunk drivers, domestic disputes, even cattle theft. But missing persons? Usually they turned up. Embarrassed, broke, but they came back. Rachel faced him with her eyes red from crying. "Mrs. Halenol," Bracken said, "I understand your concern. Now let's look at the facts. Jaime's 19 years old, a legal adult, no signs of foul play. His belongings are still in his room?" "Yes," she said, voice tight. "But did you two argue recently?" "Any tension at home?" Brackens leaned back. "Ma'am, with all due respect, 19-year-olds do this all the time. Stress, school, relationships, they take off for a few days. Maybe South Falls, maybe Denver. They usually come back when they run out of money." Rachel's voice cracked. "He took my Jeep. Said he'd be back in an hour. Something happened. I can feel it." Bracken sighed. "We'll put out a bolo. Be on the lookout for the vehicle. If any officer spots it, we'll bring him home. But 9 times out of 10, these things resolve themselves within 72 hours. Rachel left feeling hollow, dismissed. Her son's disappearance seemed to be an inconvenience. She drove straight to Sarah's house. Sarah answered, eyes puffy from crying. Aaron stood behind her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Mom, what's happening?" "Where is Jaime?" asked Sarah. "I don't know," Rachel admitted. "He didn't come home last night." "Did he call you?" "No," Sarah whispered. "Nothing." "Oh, God. Mom, where is he?" Aaron stepped forward. "Mrs. Halenol, I'm sure he's okay. Jaime's smart, capable. He probably just needed some space." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Space from what?" Aaron shrugged. "I don't know. School, maybe. He seems stressed lately." Workload piling up, Rachel frowned. Jaime had never complained about school. He loved his classes. When had he mentioned stress? "Last week, I think. At the store," Aaron muttered. Rachel's mind spun. Her son was missing. Nothing made sense. Sarah grabbed her mother's hands. "We'll help you look. Check his usual spots. He's probably fine, Mom. He has to be." But even she didn't believe it. On September 20th, Rachel filed a formal missing persons report. Photos, Jeep's license plate, favorite hangouts. Sheriff Brackens assured her they were looking, but no search parties, no dive teams, no helicopters. Cypress Lake, less than 2 miles from the site of Jaime's last sighting? Never checked, not even a shoreline sweep. Why? In Brackens's mind, this was voluntary. A kid who left on his own. Department resources were limited, too limited to justify a full-scale search for someone who probably just took off. Rachel begged, pleaded, "Please, check the lake." He loved fishing there. What if something happened? Brackens waved her off. If he had an accident at the lake, someone would have seen the vehicle. Fishermen go there every day, but nobody had been to Cypress Lake that week. Algae blooms made the water murky, locals avoided it. To Brackens, it didn't matter. His mind was already firmly made up. On September 20th, Deputy Mike Corwin interviewed Aaron Lindell. Standard procedure: family, friends, co-workers, timeline. Aaron was calm, composed, smooth in his answers. When did you last see Jaime? Saturday afternoon at the hardware store. We closed at about 5 p.m. How did he seem? Quiet, distracted. Told me he was all right, but I could tell something was bothering him. Anything led to an argument? None. Me and Jaime got along great. He's a good kid. Corwin's notes reflected a picture-perfect scenario. Not a red flag in sight, no contradictions. Aaron left without suspicion. Because who suspects the family? By September 21st, 1994, 72 hours after Jaime disappeared, Brackens closed the case. Voluntary missing person. Rachel got the call. "We've done everything we can," they said. "No evidence of foul play. Jaime left on his own. He's an adult. If he contacts you, let us know. Otherwise, nothing more we can do 3 days." That was how much her son's life was worth to the Glen Cross Police Department. No forensics, no phone records, no financial audits, no interviews, no search of Cypress Lake. Jaime Halenol was a statistic, a closed file. The man who murdered him walked free. Failures were systemic. Small-town police lacked resources, training, funding. Missing person protocols outdated. No oversight, no accountability. But more so, bias, assumptions. Kid missing, must have run away. Mother worried overreacting. Family member calm, helpful innocent. Aaron Lindell exploited every assumption. He knew Brackens wouldn't dig. He knew being Sarah's husband would shield him. And for 29 years, it worked. But Rachel never stopped believing her son deserved better. That unyielding belief, the refusal to let Jaime be forgotten, would eventually bring the truth to the surface. Aaron Lindell, my daughter's ex-husband, he worked at our store. Jaime found something. I know he did. And Aaron, he made him disappear. Rachel's voice was shaking, but her eyes were made of steel. Sheriff Moreno exchanged a glance with the DCI agent standing beside him. "We will investigate everything, Mrs. Halenol. I promise you." By evening, news crews had descended upon Glen Cross. Cold case breakthrough. Missing teen found in lake after 29 years. The story swept across South Dakota and soon hit national news. Jaime Halenol's name, forgotten for almost 3 decades, was suddenly everywhere. The community of Glen Cross was in shock. Those who knew Jaime flocked to the lake, leaving flowers and candles and handwritten notes. "We should have looked harder. We're sorry, Rachel. Justice for Jaime." But grief wasn't the only emotion. Anger and shame rippled through this town. Everyone knew the truth. The police had failed. The system had failed. And a killer had walked free for 29 years. This is where the heartbreaking tragedy turns into an all-out murder investigation. If you want to see how investigators track down someone who thought they were untouchable for 3 decades, stay tuned and share this video. Someone you know needs to hear this story. By the way, what's the weather like today where you are? It had taken 6 painstaking hours to recover the remains of Jaime Halenol. Divers carefully extracted him, placing the remains in a body bag and bringing them ashore. Rachel insisted on being there. She stood at the water's edge with Mila by her side as her son was finally brought home. After 29 years, Jaime Halenol was coming back, but the investigation had only just begun. On September 15, 2023, The South Dakota State Crime Lab in Pierre took possession of Miami's remains and every piece of evidence that was recovered from the submerged Jeep Grand Cherokee. Dr. Linda Vasquez, the state's chief medical examiner, had performed hundreds of autopsies. But cases like this, submerged for nearly 3 decades, required extraordinary care and precision. The bones were fragile. Waterlogged clothing disintegrated at the slightest touch. Dr. Vasquez and her team worked methodically, documenting every detail. Preliminary findings came within 48 hours. Cause of death, a gunshot wound to the chest. The bullet had come in through Jaime's sternum, pierced his heart, and then lodged in his thoracic spine. Miraculously, the bullet remained embedded in bone, .38 caliber. Dr. Vasquez called Sheriff Moreno personally. "Kate, this wasn't an accident, not a suicide. Someone shot this kid and dumped him in that lake." Moreno's jaw tightened. "I need everything you've got." "You'll have it," Vasquez promised. The Jeep was taken to a secure garage in Rapid City for forensic processing. 29 years underwater had destroyed most trace evidence. No usable fingerprints. No DNA on the steering wheel or door handles. The interior was a swamp of silt, algae, and decay. But then they found something. Wedged beneath the passenger seat, a waterproof pouch, the kind fishermen use to protect phones and wallets. Inside, an old photograph, faded and warped, yet still visible. A wedding photo. Sarah Halenol and Aaron Lindell. Dated June 1994. On the back, Jaime had written, September 18th, 7 p.m., CL Cypress Lake. Jaime had taken minutes of the meeting. He'd made a record. Insurance, maybe. Maybe he sensed danger. The forensic team photographed the evidence, logged it, and sealed it. This was proof. Jaime had arranged to meet someone at Cypress Lake on the night he disappeared. And that someone was connected to Aaron Lindell. Special Agent Derek Collins of the South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigation took the lead. 47 years old with 22 years at DCY and a specialty in homicide, Collins had worked cold cases, but never one quite like this. A body underwater for 29 years, and a suspect who had vanished decades ago. Collins immediately pulled every file from the original 1994 investigation. What he found left him fuming. 3 days, 2 interviews, no forensic analysis, no financial records reviewed, no follow-up. Sheriff Tom Brackens, long retired, had treated Jaime's disappearance like an annoyance, not a crime. Collins' jaw tightened. This wasn't just negligence. This was a miscarriage of justice, and it had let a killer walk free for almost 3 decades. Collins flagged Brackens for an interview, which was not based on any suspicion on his part, but rather that someone had to account for the colossal failure of the original investigation. He began with the family. Sitting at the Halenol residence on Elm Street, the very house Jaime had departed on that fateful September night, Collins spoke with calm yet firm resolve. "Mrs. Halenol, I have some tough questions that pertain to the days leading up to Jaime's disappearance. Anything unusual? Anything he said or did?" Rachel's hands shook as she raised her tea. He was distracted, anxious. He told me he had to attend to something, but he refused to tell me what it was." "Did he mention Aaron Lindell?" Collins asked cautiously. Rachel hesitated, not wanting to speak too directly, but it was as clear as day now. "He had been going through the store's books a lot that week, late nights. He said he was just organizing things, but looking back, I think he found something." "I know he did," Collins leaned forward. "Why didn't you tell the police back in 1994? Her voice broke. "I did." Sheriff Brackens said it wasn't relevant, that Jaime probably ran off because of stress. He didn't care. Collins' jaw set. "I do care. What else can you tell me about Aaron?" Mila spoke up, her voice steady despite the years of grief. "He changed after Jaime disappeared. My sister Sarah said he got paranoid, cold. She divorced him in 98, and then he vanished in 99. No one's heard from him since." "Did Sarah keep in touch with him?" Collins asked. "No," said Mila. "She tried calling a few times after the divorce. Disconnected. It was like he erased himself." Collins nodded. "Where is she now?" "Rapid City," Mila replied. "She remarried. Last name Polson. You'll need to speak with her." On September 18, 2023, Collins met Sarah Polson at a downtown coffee shop. At 53, gray streaks in her hair and tired eyes, she was worn, but not defeated. She'd expected this conversation. "I should have known," she said before Collins asked a question. "Known what?" "That Aaron killed my brother." Collins started his recorder. "Tell me everything." Sarah's hands shook as she spoke. "Aaron wasn't the man I thought he was. After we married, he changed. Controlling. Secretive. He'd disappear for hours, wouldn't tell me where he went. When Jaime vanished, he acted wrong. Too calm. Everyone else was falling apart. Mom, Mila, me. Aaron, he was fine, like it didn't touch him. I asked once if he thought Jaime was okay. He said, he'll turn up, or he won't. Worrying doesn't change anything." "What happened after the divorce?" asked Collins. "He spiraled. Paranoid. He accused me of conspiring against him. He thought people were tracking him. In 1999, he told me that he was leaving, starting over. I asked where. He wouldn't say. Mentioned the finances of the hardware store to him?" Sarah's eyes went wide. "No." "Why?" Collins asked. "We believe Aaron was embezzling from your family's business." "And we believe Jaime found out." Sarah's face went pale. "Oh my God. That's why Jaime wanted to handle something. He knew." Collins nodded. "We're going to find Aaron, Mrs. Polson. But I need your help. Anything you remember, names, places, anyone he knew, could be crucial." Sarah wiped her eyes. "There's one thing. Aaron had a cousin in Springfield, Illinois. I remember because he visited him once in 2002. I was still getting mail at my old address, and a postcard came from there. Aaron never signed it, but I knew his handwriting." "Springfield," Collins muttered, jotting a note. "A beginning, at any rate." Back at DCI headquarters, Collins' team started exploring Aaron Lindell's past. They pulled financial records from Halenol and Sons Hardware. Surprisingly, the 1994 bookkeeping had been archived at the county clerk's office. Forensic accountants spent 3 days untangling the fraud. Aaron had created fake vendor invoices, payments to shell companies that didn't exist. During more than 8 months, which in January to August 1994, he skimmed $47,300. Small amounts at first, $600 here, $900 there. Just enough to not raise any flags. By August, he was taking $5,000 at a time. Sloppy and desperate, and Jaime had noticed. Collins found one notation in Jaime's handwriting on one invoice. "Call vendor." Verify Jaime had been on to him. Then came the surprise. The team of digital forensics specialists uncovered an email sent to Rachel in 2003, 9 years after Jaime vanished. Subject line, "I'm okay." The message was brief. "Mom, I'm okay. I just needed to start over. Please don't look for me. I'm sorry. Jaime." Rachel had clung to that email for years. Part of her wanted to believe it, but part of her knew the truth. Finally, in 2023, DCI's cyber unit tracked that email from 2003. The IP, Springfield, Illinois. It was sent on March 14th, the birthday of Jaime, from a public library computer. The security footage had long been deleted, but the library's digital logs still revealed which terminal had been used. Terminal 7, accessed under a guest account. Collins dug deeper, pulling every record he could find. Library card registrations, visitor logs. And there it was, a library card issued in 2001 to a man named David Morrison, address 428 Parkway Drive, Springfield. Collins ran the name. Nothing. No birth certificate, no social security number before 2001. A ghost identity. But the address was real. Springfield PD checked property records. David Morrison had lived there from 2001 to 2007, then moved. No forwarding address. There was, however, a driver's license photo. Collins pulled it, and there he was, Aaron Lindell. Older, graying, but unmistakably him. A federal warrant was issued immediately. Charges: first-degree murder, identity fraud, obstruction of justice. Now they just had to find him. The U.S. Marshals joined in the search, tracking David Morrison through his tax records, his work history, his vehicle registrations. The trail led them from Illinois to Indiana. Since 2008, Morrison had worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm in Bloomington. On September 27, 2023, marshals watched an apartment complex on the east side of Bloomington. At 7:15 a.m., a man matching Aaron Lindell's description emerged, toting a briefcase and driving a silver Honda Accord. The license plate? Registered to David Morrison. The marshals moved in. The next morning, 2 blocks from his apartment and at 7:47 a.m. on September 28, 2023, they pulled him over. He didn't resist, didn't run. Hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. "Step out of the vehicle," a marshal ordered. Aaron Lindell, 57, his hair gray, face hollowed, stood and complied. "David Morrison?" the marshal asked. "That's right," Aaron said quietly. "Your real name is Aaron Michael Lindell. You're under arrest for the murder of Jaime Halenol." He said nothing for a moment, then muttered almost to himself, "I knew you'd find me eventually." He was cuffed, read his rights, and didn't speak another word. By noon, the news was everywhere. Suspect arrested in 1994 South Dakota cold case murder. Rachel Halenol got the call from Sheriff Moreno. "We got him." "He's in custody." Rachel fell to her knees, sobbing. 29 years. 29 years of waiting, searching, holding on to hope. Finally, justice was in sight. That same day, September 28, 2023, Aaron Lindell sat in the back of a U.S. Marshal's SUV, handcuffed and silent, his Honda Accord impounded. FBI agents searched his apartment. His life as David Morrison was over. The ride to the federal detention center took 20 minutes. Aaron stared out the window the entire time. Blank. No fear, no anger, just emptiness, like he'd been waiting for this day for 29 years. After being taken to the detention center, Aaron was processed, fingerprinted, photographed, belongings confiscated. Then he was led to a small, windowless interrogation room with a metal table bolted to the floor. Sitting across from him were Special Agent Derek Collins and FBI Special Agent Nina Ortiz. Collins placed a folder on the table. Crime scene photos, forensic reports, the wedding photograph with Jaime's handwriting on the back. "Aaron Lindell, also known as David Morrison, you're being charged with the first-degree murder of Jaime Michael Halenol. Do you understand?" Aaron's eyes flicked to the folder, but didn't open it. "I understand. You have the right to an attorney. Do you want one present?" "Yes," he said quietly. Collins nodded. Expected. "Then we'll wait." But Aaron spoke again. "How did you find me?" "You want to talk?" he replied. "I asked a question." Ortiz leaned forward. "The email in 2003, you sent Rachel Halenol a message from Jaime's account. Thought you were being clever, but you left a digital trail, IP address traced back to Springfield, library records, your fake identity, your driver's license. Then tax records led us to Bloomington." Aaron's jaw tightened. A flicker of regret, or perhaps disbelief, crossed his face. "Stupid," he muttered. "Why'd you do it?" Collins asked. "Why send that email?" Aaron looked up. "Because she wouldn't stop." "Rachel," she kept searching, calling, putting up flyers. "I thought if she believed Jaime contacted her, she'd let it go. But she didn't." "No, she didn't." Silence. Collins opened the folder, sliding a photo across the table. Jaime Halenol's senior portrait. 19 years old, smiling. A kid with his whole life ahead. "You killed him," Collins said. Aaron said nothing but stared at the photo. "We recovered his body from Cypress Lake," Collins went on to say. 40 feet down, still in the Jeep, bullet in his chest, .38 caliber, the same caliber you purchased in July 1994. Aaron's hands clenched. Collins slid another photo across the wedding photo, Jaime's handwriting on the back. Evidence that he had documented the meeting, that he had known something was dangerous that night. September 18th, 7 p.m., Cypress Lake. "You were meeting him there," Ortiz pressed. "Still nothing?" "We have the financial records. $47,000 embezzled from the hardware store. Jaime found out, confronted you, and you killed him." Aaron's breathing quickened. "You shot a 19-year-old kid," Ortiz said, voice rising. "Your wife's brother, someone who trusted you. Then you drove his body into a lake and let his family suffer for 29 years. Aaron's eyes glistened. but he didn't break. "I want my lawyer." Collins closed the folder. "Smart choice, because the evidence we have, it's airtight. You're never walking free again." 2 hours later, Aaron's court-appointed attorney arrived. Marcus Flynn, 31, young but experienced in high-profile cases, met with Aaron in private. An hour later, Flynn emerged, grim-faced. "My client won't be making any statements," he told Collins. "Figured. But off the record, you've got him. Evidence is overwhelming. Tell him to take a plea. Life without parole. Save everyone the trial." Flynn shook his head. "He won't. He wants his day in court." "Why?" "I don't know," Flynn said. "Maybe he thinks he can beat it. Maybe he just wants to be heard. Either way, we're going to trial September 29th, 2023. Aaron Lindell was extradited to South Dakota, flown on a federal transport plane, escorted by marshals, and delivered to the Pennington County Jail in Rapid City. News of his arrest had already spread statewide. Journalists swarmed the jail, cameras, microphones, all trying to capture the man who had escaped justice for nearly 3 decades. Aaron was led from the transport van in shackles, orange jumpsuit, head down. Camera flashes erupted. Reporters shouted questions. "Aaron Lindell, did you kill Jaime Halenol? Why did you run? Anything to say to the family?" Aaron said nothing, didn't look up, just shuffled inside, flanked by deputies. Back in Glen Cross, the community was reeling. Aaron Lindell had lived among them, worked at their hardware store, attended their church, smiled at their kids, and had murdered one of their own. At Mabel's Diner on Main Street, the unofficial town hall, the conversations were heated. "I can't believe we didn't see it. He seemed so normal. How do you live with that? How do you kill someone and just go on?" Some had remembered Aaron as quiet, polite, unremarkable. Others admitted they'd always felt that something was off. Hindsight was loud. One voice cut through the noise. Pastor Jim Holloway of Glen Cross Methodist Church stood. "We failed Jaime, all of us. Police, community. We dismissed Rachel's concerns. We let a killer walk free because we didn't want to believe one of our own could do something like this. We owe that family more than sympathy. We owe them accountability." The room fell silent. Pastor Holloway was right. Rachel and Mila were sitting in the living room, watching the arrest coverage. When Aaron's face appeared on screen, older, grayer, still him, Rachel's hands shook. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the man who took my son." Mila wrapped her arms tightly around her mother. "It's over, Mom. He's not getting away this time." But Rachel didn't feel any relief. She felt rage. 29 years. Aaron had lived free for 29 years while Jaime rotted in a lake. He had married, divorced, built a new identity. Meanwhile, Rachel had spent 3 decades wondering if her son was alive, cold, scared, if he thought she'd given up. Aaron Lindell had stolen all of that, and now Rachel wanted him to pay. "I want to be there," Rachel said. "At the trial. I want to look him in the eye." Mila nodded. "We both will." October 3rd, 2023. Aaron Lindell was arraigned in Pennington County Circuit Court. The courtroom was full. Media, victim advocates, residents of Glen Cross. Up front, Rachel and Mila. Aaron was led in, shackled and wearing an orange jumpsuit. His eyes scanned the room and then they landed on them. Rachel stared with a look that could burn through steel. Mila's was clenching her jaw, her hand digging into her mother's. For one fleeting second, Aaron's facade of cool cracked. His gaze dropped. He looked away. Judge Patricia Langford read the charges. "Aaron Michael Lindell, you are charged with first-degree murder in the death of Jaime Michael Halenol. How do you plead?" Marcus Flynn stood up. "Not guilty, Your Honor." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Langford set the trial date, November 2nd, 2023, 1 month away. Aaron was led from the courtroom. He didn't look at Rachel again, but she kept her eyes on him until he disappeared through the door. November 2nd, 2023, Pennington County Courthouse, Rapid City, South Dakota. On a cold Thursday morning, the trial of Aaron Michael Lindell got underway. Day 2 dawned cold and gray. the snow dusting the steps of the courthouse once more. The wind whistled along the streets of Rapid City. The courtroom filled early, the jury taking their seats. Their attention peaked, knowing full well that what they were about to hear would span almost 3 decades. Monica Reyes took the stand again, this time accompanied by Curtis Webb, lead diver with Recovery Reach. A Navy suit was carefully pressed onto his frame, but it was his hands that told of long hours submerged. Reyes led him carefully. "Mr. Webb, can you describe to the jury the recovery of Jaime Halenol's vehicle from Cypress Lake?" Curtis nodded. "Yes, ma'am. On September 14th, 2023, our team conducted a systematic sonar scan of Cypress Lake, about 2 miles from Glen Cross. After 3 days of searching, we identified a large object 40 feet below the surface. It was a Jeep Grand Cherokee, heavily encrusted with sediment and algae." He paused, eyes distant. "I descended in a wetsuit, camera mounted on my helmet. Inside, we found skeletal remains, seatbelt still fastened, in the driver's seat. The license plate confirmed it belonged to Jaime Halenol." Reyes held up a photo for the jury, a sonar image, murky but unmistakable. "This is what you found?" "Yes, ma'am. That's the Jeep and the remains inside." She let the photo hang in the air. "And the condition of the vehicle and remains, what did it indicate about how long the body had been submerged?" Curtis's jaw clenched. "Decades. The decomposition, water damage, sediment buildup, all consistent with being underwater for nearly 30 years. Tears glistened behind Rachel Halenol's glasses, her grip tight on her cane. Mila's hand rested on her mother's shoulder. Reyes pivoted to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Webb's testimony proves that Jaime's body was deliberately hidden, not an accident. It was concealed so that the world would forget him. But the evidence didn't stop there." Day 2 continued with the state's chief medical examiner, Dr. Linda Vasquez, who described the bullet found lodged in Jaime's sternum, .38 caliber, the exact type Aaron Lindell had purchased months before the murder. The jury sat forward, hanging on every word. Next, Reyes presented the photograph recovered from the Jeep, a wedding photo of Sarah Halenol and Aaron Lindell from June 1994, with a handwritten note on the back. "September 18th, 7 p.m., CL Cypress Lake." The handwriting matched Jaime's. "This," Reyes said, her voice quiet but cutting, "shows Jaime planned to meet someone at Cypress Lake the night he disappeared. That someone had a motive. That someone was Aaron Lindell." Flynn immediately rose to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. This is circumstantial. This proves nothing. A photograph doesn't prove murder." Judge Langford nodded. "Objection noted. Jurors, remember the difference between evidence and speculation. We will hear more from the state before drawing conclusions." Flynn then began his cross-examination of Curtis Webb and Dr. Vasquez, asking about water currents, decomposition timelines, the possibility of misidentification, the limitations of sonar imagery. But both witnesses held firm. The testimony was detailed, precise, and backed by science. There was no wiggle room. By the end of day 2, the jury had viewed the Jeep, heard about the recovery, listened to the medical examiner's findings, and grasped the premeditation reflected in the handwritten note from Jaime. The burden of 29 years of deception weighed heavy within this courtroom. Rachel Halenol left the stand exhausted, her cane supporting her heart still racing. Mila squeezed her hand. "It's happening, Mom. It's really happening." And for the first time in nearly 3 decades, Rachel allowed herself a small flicker of hope. Justice, long delayed, was finally catching up. Judge Langford sat down, the gavel in her hand. The courtroom turned almost silent. The air was heavy with tension. "Will the jury please rise?" she said. 12 jurors stood, faces tense, hands gripping the benches. "Have you reached a verdict?" asked the judge. The foreperson, a middle-aged schoolteacher, cleared her throat. "We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, find the defendant, Aaron Michael Lindell, guilty of first-degree murder." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Some journalists murmured. A few residents wiped tears from their eyes. Rachel felt her knees weaken, Mila supporting her as the words sank in. After 29 years of searching, hoping, and fearing the worst, justice had finally been served. Aaron Lindell's expression remained impassive. No reaction, no remorse. He was led back to his seat by the deputies. Judge Langford's voice rang clear. Mr. Lindell, you have been found guilty of first-degree murder. Sentencing will be scheduled at a later date. Monica Reyes exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time in weeks. She had fought to give this family justice, and now she had. Rachel Halenol felt a mix of emotions. Grief for the son she had lost, relief that the man responsible would no longer walk free, and a profound exhaustion that only decades of waiting could produce. Mila squeezed her mother's hand, whispering, "It's over, Mom. He won't hurt anyone else. We did it." Outside the courthouse, the winter sun broke through the clouds. A light snow fell, almost as if the world was silently recognizing the end of a long, dark chapter. Rachel Halenol, with her daughter by her side, finally let herself breathe. Jaime's name would never be erased, and the truth had finally been brought into the light. Aaron Lindell would spend the rest of his life incarcerated. But for Rachel, Mila, and the community of Glen Cross, the verdict was more than justice. It was closure. The winter sunlight glinted off the courthouse steps as Rachel and Ma stepped outside, the cold air biting at their cheeks. The crowd of friends, neighbors, and journalists parted respectfully, giving the family space. For the first time in 29 years, Rachel felt a weight lift from her chest, though the ache of loss remained. Mila wrapped her arms around her mother and grandmother, holding them close. "It's finally over," she whispered. Rachel nodded, tears streaking her face, a mix of grief, relief, and a fierce, quiet triumph. Reporters swarmed Monica Reyes with questions, cameras flashing. "This verdict proves persistence matters," Reyes said. "The Halenol family never stopped believing, never stopped searching, and today the law finally caught up to a man who thought he could hide his crimes forever." The three of them walked to their car slowly, holding hands. People passing by congratulated them in hushed tones, with hugs and nods of respect. No cheering, just understanding and empathy in the crowd for the decades of pain endured. Jaime's memory lingered in the autumn air. His absence had molded their lives, but today his legacy of courage and truth triumphed over deceit. Rachel whispered up to the sky above Cypress Lake, "We found you, Jaime, and now we can finally begin to heal." As they drove home, snow flurries dusted the windshield, like tiny reminders that even the darkest secrets, when pursued with relentless love and persistence, eventually see the light. Justice had come, not quickly, not easily, but it had come. The story of the Halenol family would always be one of hope, perseverance, and a mother's love that never truly ended. And in Glen Cross, Jaime Halenol would never be forgotten. Always remembered, forever loved, gone too soon but never forgotten. Rachel let the cold granite anchor her grief, her relief, her love as she traced her fingers over the engraving. Mila stood beside her, arms crossed but eyes misty, both feeling the weight and the peace of closure. Families, friends, and townspeople gathered around them, leaving flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. The sound of gentle water lapping against the shore filled the air, almost as if the lake itself were honoring Jaime's memory. Sheriff Kate Moreno, standing beside him, spoke to the crowd. "This memorial is not just for Jaime. It's a reminder of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and accountability, and a promise that Glen Cross will never let a tragedy like this go unanswered again." Rachel looked at the gathering, saw the faces of neighbors who had grown up with Jaime, who for decades had lived under the shadow of his disappearance, and for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future not defined by fear or unanswered questions. She stepped back, taking a deep breath, feeling the wind off Cypress Lake on her face. "This is where we heal," she whispered to Mila, "where Jaime's story lives on, not just in sorrow but in hope, in action, in justice." The Jaime Halenol Memorial became a pilgrimage site for students, visitors, and anyone inspired by the resilience of a family who refused to give up. Teachers brought classes to learn about the importance of truth and perseverance. The scholarship fund grew steadily, supporting students across South Dakota who were determined to make a difference in the world of criminal justice and victim advocacy. The summer of 2024 brought Glen Cross closer to serenity and softness, still bearing the scars but simultaneously shining from all the lessons learned. Rachel and Ma Halenol usually spent a lot of time by the lake, in comfortable silence, or sharing stories about Jaime, how he laughed, how he loved, how he had always been with them. They had taken his life, but through the relentless will of a loving family, his legacy became a beacon. A reminder that justice, though delayed, was well worth the wait, and that the courage to seek truth would reverberate through generations. The water glimmered in the morning sun at Cypress Lake. Snow flurries occasionally dusted the memorial, a quiet nod to winter days like that one when the truth finally came to light. And Rachel, standing there with Mela and Ma, felt Jaime close again, not just in memory but in the lasting resonance of his story, his fight, his family's love. Jaime Michael Halenol, born March 14, 1975, taken September 18, 1994. Beloved son, brother, and friend, his story, once silenced by fear and negligence, now stands as a testament to persistence, courage, and justice. The gray Jeep Grand Cherokee that had held him underwater for 29 years rests in evidence storage, a silent reminder of a crime that took too long to solve. But Jaime himself is finally home, not just in memory but in the lives he continues to touch. Scholarships, memorials, reformed laws, advocacy, and education all carry forward the legacy of a life stolen too soon. Rachel Halenol, Mila, and Ma Halenol transformed grief into purpose, a decades-long nightmare into systemic change. They reminded the world that families unwilling to be silenced can make a difference. Persistence can surface the truth no matter how deeply it's buried, and one mother's belief in justice can reshape an entire community. Aaron Lindell attempted to erase Jaime Halenol. He did not succeed. Life without parole confines him, but Jaime's life continues to inspire, to protect, and to teach. This is more than just a story about a solved cold case. It's about accountability, resilience, and the enduring power of truth. It's a reminder. The truth always surfaces. You just have to keep searching. The name of Jaime Halenol lives on. His memory does matter, and his story will continue to light the way to those still fighting for justice.